Mithrandir, why the halfling?
Why, Bilbo Baggins? Perhaps it is because I'm afraid. And it gives me courage.
The thing is, you know, I think you come back and you look at that side, and then as soon as he says, of course he's going to come, you know, it's like a bit sort of childish, but you're kind of excited about doing it anyway. Okay. Play around with that.
And I'm pretty much out of frame once I start running, right?
You're out of, well...
Do I have to round the bend?
Just round the bend.
Okay.
Just round the bend, and I'll yell, as soon as you disappear, I'll yell at reset. So.
Great.
Thank you. Shooting, please.
When we made The Lord of the Rings, I was absolutely sure that that was going to be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I never realised that 10 years later, we were doing it all over again.
Looking good? All right. 1, 2, 3.
We actually shot for 266 days on The Hobbit, which was exactly the same number of days that we shot on The Lord of the Rings. So I've sort of done the once-in-a-lifetime experience twice, but not a third time. There won't be a third time.
Hello, look at you. You look fantastic.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
I remember the day when I knew we were back in Middle-earth. I walked into the costume room and there was Gandalf. And I suddenly thought, we're back.
Oh, wow. He hasn't lost the touch.
10 years ago, it was Ian playing the character of Gandalf, and no one had seen any of the movies. But now, that's an iconic figure. That's Gandalf.
In my heart of hearts, I would have not been happy if some other actor was playing Gandalf. All too easy to do, you know. You just stick on a beard and do a rough voice, and there you are, you know. Anyone can do it, really.
It was a little bit like returning to summer camp. You know, so many of the people who were part of the first journey are part of this journey. Oh, it's all coming back to me.
All right.
What a
would have
treat.
thought it would ever have happened again.
I know. To have a chance to return, pop the wig on and the feet on.
Yeah. I love it.
It kind of feels like I've stepped into a time machine.
It was extraordinary coming back onto set with those same people. You looked around at all the faces in the crew and thought, here we go.
The same heads of department, the same creative talent. And we're talking, you know, 20 or 30 of the most senior people in The Hobbit were Lord of the Rings veterans.
Every new film, you're going to challenge yourself to better what you've done before. In relative terms, for the 3 films of Lord of the Rings, we did under 1,000 illustrations. For The Hobbit, we've done 9,000 illustrations.
One of the major differences of the experience this time is coming back to a full-fledged cinema industry here in New Zealand. 10 years ago, it was all very new, but we're coming back into a very sophisticated system.
It's exciting to meet a whole new group of people and sort of seeing in them a little bit what we felt like when we started.
These opportunities don't come around very often, and this particular book was one that really made me become an actor because it got me into literature and films as well. So yeah, it was quite a big deal.
I came into the Tolkien world through the films, and going from being a fan to being a crew member has been the most extraordinary thing. There's so many moments where I've just thought, wow.
So here we are. This is where we're going to be shooting our first day on The Hobbit. These are the Goblin Tunnels. This is a whole network of passageways below the Misty Mountains, where Bilbo has a chance encounter with Gollum.
It was strange to actually read the script for the first time and go, oh yeah, right, I'm actually going to have to play this guy again.
3 guesses. Very well. Guess away.
It was really nice to do a little chamber piece first, and it was just 2 people hammering it out.
I don't want any trouble. Do you understand me? You just show me how to get out of here and I'll be on my way. Yes.
It made a lot of sense, I think, starting with a character that was familiar. Because I think if Martin had been faced with a scene with the 13 dwarves, it would have been a big thing for him to deal with. Dealing with 1, well, 2, I should say, you know, personalities. That was probably a good place to start.
Do it again. Do it again. Ask us. No. No more riddles.
Although he'll be Gollumized, you know, digitally, that's who you're working with. You're just in a scene, you're doing a play. You don't see any of that, you just see Andy giving you this mad creature.
Where is it? Where is it? No! Jesus is precious! My precious! What have you lost? No!
And cut it. Thank you, that's terrific. I think we can check the gate on that. Remember yesterday we did a thing where you lowered the sword and then you bring it up again when he makes the threatening move. If we could go back to that. Great, thank you. All right, shall we give it a go?
Shooting, thanks. Here we go, please.
The thing that's so incredible about Martin is that he's always exploring, he's experimenting, he's trying different things, trying to figure out where Bilbo's truth is.
Right. What's stopping me from climbing the trees is actually dwarfs being
Well,
in the
that
way,
would be kind of
rather
a bit
than because in the
yeah.
script it's like because I'm too small, but the dwarves aren't that much taller than me. So
Because my feeling as well, it's not just the ring.
I'm in the process of relinquishing my grip over my own house. I'm just trying to find what it is that makes me say that. Well, I think I'm just shocked, aren't I?
Yeah.
I'm always in favour of starting a fresh slate because what I don't need to do and what the audience doesn't need to do is be hamstrung by my impressions of Ian Holm.
There's one small chest and hardly overflowing. And it still smells of troll.
Ian Holm had already set the bar, you know, for what Bilbo was.
There's a lot about Martin that is very Bilbo-like. He's probably one of the nearest people to a hobbit that I've ever actually met. Don't know whether he'll be happy hearing that or not.
I approach Bilbo's physicality from a way of playing a character as opposed to playing a different species. So I just looked at his characteristics. The things that struck me about him suggested a certain timidity in a lot of life, you know, because his world is his house and Hobbiton, and beyond that it's all a little scary. And certainly with, you know, a load of strange dwarves and a wizard turning up.
The book is called The Hobbit, but really central to the story are the dwarves.
You say rather than Biffa Boffa Bomber, I should say Boffa Biffa Bomber.
No idea.
13 main characters, actually 14 with The Hobbit. Well, if you include Gandalf, 50.
One of the scary things about adapting The Hobbit is the fact there's 13 dwarves. And differentiating those characters was important.
Family portrait.
Smile. In the book, it's really only 3 or 4 of the dwarves that are kind of expanded in any real way. Gimli in the first film has a very distinctive look, but when you have 13 dwarves in scenes, if they all look the same, it's going to be very difficult for the watching audience.
We did work really hard to distinguish the dwarves from each other to help find that personality.
We sit back and let others take what is rightfully ours. Or do we seize this chance to take back Erebor?
Thorin is a proud, quite an angry dwarf, but he has a lot of love for his men.
Fili is the nephew of Thorin, so he's a young prince. Is that right? He is, must be right.
Keely is quite a skillful bowman. He's up for fun and he's up for smashing a few heads.
At your service. Balin is like the consigliere, the advisor.
Dwalin is an absolute kick-ass warrior.
Gloin is the banker of the group. I sort of look after the finances.
Owen is a chemist, so if you have any kind of bruise, I could probably come up with a decent ointment for you.
Dory is loyal to his brothers. He worries constantly about Nori.
I'm a thief. I steal things. I get us into a bit of trouble, actually.
And then Dory totally mothers Ori.
Try it. Just a mouthful.
I don't like green food. Ori is kind of the naive young dwarf.
I'm Bomber. He's a fat dwarf, basically. That's, not a bit about the bush.
Buffer is good-looking dwarf. No, he's not, actually. I mean, he's optimistic and kind of funny.
Biffa has a head wound, and he can only speak in the ancient dwarvish language.
Like he said, never trust an elf.
So the entire interview is going to have to be in Kuzdal, because that's all I respond to. So please, fire away.
Everyone is very different in a very individual way. I'm glad I didn't have to do anything. I just stick on the costume, thank God.
We went through an elaborate process of designing and redesigning the characters till we found a unique and iconic look for each of those dwarves.
Peter, that looks wonderful.
Peter was very clear about having a really distinct silhouette for all of them, so they all have their own distinct body shape. And all our 13 dwarves have a fat suit.
We have many different sizes of fat suits. It makes us look wider and therefore shorter.
Tell you what, why don't you put your pants
There we can just turn around and face. It's quite a landscape.
We've got two basic styles of fat suit. There's like a muscle suit, and then there's a fat suit. And then we have bomber, which is like a extreme fat suit. This is the piece de resistance.
The physical transformation is huge. It's been a challenge to try and work through that, to try and still have the expressions and do what I have to do to get through all those extra layers.
Marvellous, marvellous.
There's latex all under the chin and topped with silicone. I've got about 5 pieces. I think the only part that's me that you can see is just below my eyes and my lips.
With Thorin, it was very crucial that we believed him to be a leader.
On this character, you do need to be able to read a huge amount of information from his face.
We decided that too long a beard on Richard was too distracting.
Tolkien described Thorin as having a forked beard that he tucked into his belt. We have had to depart from that. I know this is controversial because the king of the Longbeards, people feel he should have a long beard, but there was something I found to sort of ease my conscience of it. It's in The Hobbit that when the dwarves emerged from Erebor, they had singed beards, so the reason Thorin wears his beard short is in reverence to those dwarves that had died in the mountain. When he becomes king, he'll grow that beard back.
Because The Hobbit's got a lot of dwarfs on it, we designed a dwarf boot camp.
The boot camp was essentially a training period during which we were introduced to what we would be required to do as dwarves through the production.
I think it was the guts of 8 weeks or something we were training quite heavily for, and it breaks you in so well.
We had to learn to fight, we learned to box, we learned to fight with swords, and then we learned to fight with our individual weapons.
For me, I never had 2 swords in my hand, obviously. Why would I have 2 swords in my hands? So I had to sort of like get the coordination of that going, which was, you know, challenging.
I guess what we're looking to achieve here is a sort of a comfort with the weapons and the character, so when we go on set, it'll look real.
I've just been doing archery training. Now, you know, I would pay to learn how to do archery. Immersing yourself in a job like that. It's so rare that you get the chance.
I hope you got that.
Getting into you ready?
Terry Notary was our movement teacher. He worked for some years in the Cirque du Soleil troupe, and before that was United States representative gymnast.
Let's start just moving the weight side to side. Feel that weight distribution.
I came up with a bunch of exercises that would get these guys feeling grounded and really rooted.
Dwarves have a deep foundation in their core, and they leave a large footprint. And they're gut-driven, so they lead with their gut.
They should feel like little Sherman tanks, and it's like they plow wherever they go.
In the end, of course, we have footwear, which, you know, is... My shoe is about this size. And lifting your leg off the floor is about as much as you can do.
Boot camp was when a real rapport started to develop among us as a group.
Lump the knives and bend the forks, smash the bottles and burn the corks, chip the glasses and crack the plates. That's what Bilbo Baggins hates.
We had to do singing training. They've managed to get a lot of Tolkien's music in there, which is fantastic, and we as dwarves get to sing those songs, and it's us singing them.
That's it, that's it. And it's, but just watch, it's not Khazad, like Khazad-dû.
Khazad.
Yeah, that's it.
We had dwarvish lessons as part of our dialect coaching.
There were moments where a character would break into Dwarvish.
That actually means he's our great leader, he is not here. And the reason I've introduced that is because he's Thorin Oakenshield. No Dori. You go through this whole process of learning, then you forget about all that stuff because it's still in the back of your head, but you just get on with playing the character.
If we hadn't had those 8 weeks to begin with and we hadn't have kept up the physical work all the way through filming, it would have been very difficult. It's a very difficult job for all of us.
So you guys are walking up the hill. There'll be a lot of wind and a lot of rain, and you should play the cold, the uncomfortableness, just make it look miserable. I mean, it won't be, you'll be enjoying yourselves, but make it look miserable.
We were carrying 30, 40 kgs of weight sometimes, and this is in costumes and props and weapons and stuff.
I've actually been hiding over there, so delay putting this stuff on.
Hold on, you're not finished. It's supposed to be a light spritz.
No,
it is. Oh, no.
You're wearing very heavy, amazingly designed costume, and the wind machines were going crazy, the rain was falling down. It was like a typical Irish summer. It was very, very wet.
That was awesome.
Afterwards, we were all determined to weigh ourselves. I was carrying 50 kg, which is a lot to be carrying for about 6 hours. It certainly has been uncomfortable at times and extremely tiring.
Peter enjoys watching us uncomfortable and pretty much in pain. He finds it hilarious. He enjoys pain, basically.
Here we go, rotate. That's it. Yeah.
The wonderful thing about Peter and his team is that they make it the book and something else.
The Hobbit was almost a lifetime's work for Tolkien. In the 60s, he was intending to rewrite The Hobbit and to issue a much more expanded version, which never got finished. But a lot of the notes that he was preparing were published in the appendices of The Return of the King. And so for us, that was an absolute goldmine of material.
You will experience The Hobbit as you probably remember it from reading the book. But you'll also be introduced to deeper and darker layers of Middle-earth and to much more of its history, like the Battle of Moria.
You've come up from Erebor to reclaim Moria, which is where the halls are, inside the mountain.
It's good to be an orc.
When dwarves start painting their nails,
I remember you from last
it gets weird.
Everything about this battle is about the defeat of the dwarves. They're being absolutely hammered.
The Gates of Moria was supposed to be part of the prologue, very small kind of vignette, and we finally ended up shooting for about 12 days.
Oh, nice!
And it turned into this kind of epic, really.
So that's our ideal spot there for your hand and the Oakenshield.
Yeah, this is the iconic moment where Thorin, the young prince, becomes Thorin Oakenshield.
Tolkien was not necessarily inspired to write because of his own experiences of World War I, but I do think that it's woven through The Hobbit. And I think that's something that comes up in the White Council. He's securing the big political landscape of Middle-earth.
The White Council was ostensibly formed to guard against the return of evil, and Galadriel decided to form this alliance between those powerful people.
Dragon has long been on your mind.
Smaug owes allegiance to no one. But if he should side with the enemy, a dragon could be used to terrible effect. As we were filming those scenes, Kate and I got down to it and said, how long have we known each other? What do we think about each other? Do we like each other?
To see where the relationship came from was important, and to make that as dynamic as possible.
The last shot of the scene is just, we cut down low and your hands give his hands a squeeze. Is that too much?
It has to be some
given the fact that you
connection.
can't have a hug and you can't have a kiss and you can't do what people would normally sort of do if they were saying farewell.
Clearly Galadriel cares for Gandalf, but there's an emotional connection between them which comes from the relationship between the actors rather than from the screenplay.
Do not be afraid. You are not alone.
This White Council represents enormous power. Now, Saruman actually is not in The Hobbit, not in the book, but fortunately for me, They decided to bring Saruman back, only this time he is a good, decent and noble man. I mean, he's not being sweet and gentle and kind. No, because he is number one.
Radagast has seen...
Radagast? Do not speak to me of Radagast the Brown. He's a foolish fellow.
I remember reading as a child this very brief mention Gandalf makes of another wizard called Radagast.
Excitement looms. Radagast kind of pops up in the book, but they've taken other writings and beefed out the part a bit, I think, in the film.
We loved the notion of a character who was absolutely nothing like Saruman the White or Gandalf the Grey.
I'll draw them off! Go!
Oh, dear, oh dear.
Radagast, he's all here in his heart. It's just not perhaps quite all there.
I can bird whistle. There's a little birdie under there doing that.
So we're out here in a big warehouse in Trentham, where the second unit are going to be shooting some sequences with Radagast, and this is Radagast's house. This is your lovely little cottage. See, the idea with the house is originally it looked quite good, and then a little acorn got dropped on the floor one day out of your pocket, and it sprouted in a bit of dirt on the floor, and it grew, and you didn't have the heart to tear it up because you don't destroy things. So the acorn turned into an enormous tree.
It's simply grown and grown and grown until it split the house wide open, making everything absolutely crooked and wonky and pushed out of shape. This lovely little house, which looked exactly like the piece of concept art.
In The Hobbit, we built 120 sets in this block of principal photography. We've worked really hard on realising Tolkien's vision in an honest and true way that is consistent with his books.
Tolkien created this whole world of Middle-earth, and there hasn't been any other writer who's created a world in the depth and detail that Tolkien did.
So many sets we walk on, it's just like, you just can't believe the amount of talent and the work that has gone into these sets. I'm sitting here on part of the Goblin set. This is a Goblin's Cave, and it is an incredible set.
A Goblin Town was enormous fun. It's all composed of platforms and swing bridges and all sorts of precarious things.
We've made a lot of generic pieces, walkways, rock faces, that are all interchangeable. Our little night fairies can come in and shift the whole set round, bring in a rock wall.
It was, of course, constructed of rubbish, terrible skeletons. It's a forensic paradise.
No one should leave home without at least 5 skulls.
We tie the rig off, because when it lowers like that, it's squashing them.
Who would be so bold as to come armed into my kingdom?
And the sets, a lot of them are very, very large, but that said, we need to make everything obviously a lot bigger. So when we film on these sets, we always have lots of artwork from John and Alan to have a good idea of what might be back there.
We have architecture and environments on screen that we could never ever find in real life, and we're able to take sets and enhance them.
The whole Goblin Kingdom is built on these precipitous slopes of rotten rock. So not only are the goblins themselves very nasty and dangerous, the whole environment is hostile.
The visual effects on The Hobbit have certainly advanced a lot in the 10 years since we did The Lord of the Rings. We have completely digital characters now, goblins, orcs, trolls.
Well, that's lovely, that is. A floater.
Bilbo's encounter with the 3 trolls, William, Bert and Tom, is one of the most iconic passages from the book, and it was something we were really looking forward to bringing to the screen.
3 of us dwarves, Mark, myself and William, are portraying the trolls as well.
Just across the way we have motion capture studios. We can actually see our creature on monitors performing in front of us.
The thing about the trolls was the weight, so it was slowing it down. You know, and breathing. We used some ankle weights, put some wrist weights on them, just to give them a sense of everything's bigger.
If the arms are like wrecking balls, that will affect the forward motion.
Andy Serkis came in also. First thing he said was, what injuries have these characters got? You know, what do they bring with them?
My troller's like really down here like that, and he walks like that.
We started to work on how they physically interrelate with each other. If they were to have a fight with each other, who would grab who, where, who would punch who, and the dynamics of the group, who's got the upper hand, who's always putting the other one down, who pushes whose buttons and how.
Are we having horse tonight or what? Shut your cake hole.
We decided that I'd end up being the one that got slapped around a bit by the others, you know, so I'd get a whack.
You're like a really dysfunctional group of 3 flatmates.
There were 3-4 days there with Peter, and we had a tremendous time there, just being in our grey suits.
The whole thing with the technology really is to do with taking as much of what the actor does and trying to use every subtlety. Directing is partly the same, really, apart from the fact that the actors look rather silly. I mean, who would want to walk around all day with a camera pointed right at their nose?
Motion capture is a really good first step for getting the trolls animated. Using that data, we can bring it all into the animation system, and then the animators just started kind of adding weight to those motions. You know, if there was 3 hops, we just made it 2, because they are these big, lumbering, 4-metre high creatures.
The troll show sequence was roughly 200 shots. We have been working on it about a year.
The way the process works is that the models department, they sculpt the model in 3D. They're just gray shaded and they're totally smooth. And so for the skin textures, we used some pieces of leather that had this really cool kind of patterns and stuff. We felt like these guys were outside a lot, and so we wanted their skin to feel quite dry and kind of leathery. You know, the creatures department is putting the skeletons and the muscle system in there to help make them move properly.
The next big challenge was getting the facial animation to look convincing. Up until now, the trolls in Middle-earth had all been voiceless creatures. But William, Bert and Tom have whole conversations.
Small burglar hobbits round these parts. Might be enough for a pie.
And then from there, everything kind of comes together until finally what you see in the final result is that we've brought this creature to life.
Hold his toes over the fire. Make him squeal.
Out of this colourful group of dwarves and wizards and there's elves, the story of The Hobbit is to take Bilbo, as played by Martin Freeman, the young, conservative, very safety-conscious Bilbo, and to see him transform.
I have never used a sword in my life. He finds a bravery that he didn't know he had, and he finds a sort of nobility that he didn't know he had. And none of the others knew he had. I do believe the worst is behind us.
That's great. And one last one, please. Thank you. This should be good. This should be good. We'll just tidy up.
This is the very last day of pickups to the first film, and we're shooting all the dwarves being dropped off by giant eagles on the Carrick.
This is a moment to remember.
The shoot was a long one, but it was a great family, it was a great team, and that atmosphere defines the experience of making the film.
As I felt last time, it's the most expensive home movie ever made. You feel you're making it with friends and neighbours.
Most of the crew and the cast are also fans and really enjoyed the challenge of entering this world.
It's a lot of people working towards a great goal, and I think that the spirit that is created by a strong ensemble is something not to be sniffed at, really.
I can't wait to come back next year and see you all again, so thank you.